The morning shift at Woodland Park Zoo was beginning as usual. The fog hadn't yet lifted, and the first rays of sunlight were just starting to filter through the treetops. It seemed as if even nature had gone quiet, sensing that this day would change everything. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the zoo director's shout, "Prepare the tranquilizers!" Evan Kane, an experienced keeper with 15 years of service, couldn't take his eyes off what was happening behind the viewing glass. Lyra, their senior female gorilla, was acting strangely. So strangely that it frightened even the most experienced staff members. Usually calm and majestic, Lyra was now pacing along the perimeter of her enclosure. Her movements, typically steady and confident, had become jerky and nervous. In her arms, she carefully held her 3-month-old baby, Zara, and it was the way she held her that made Evan's heart tighten with worry. To understand how unusual this was, you need to know Lyra's story. 15 years ago, she had been brought from a wildlife reserve in Uganda. Back then, she was a frightened young gorilla, afraid of any movement beyond the glass of her enclosure. It was Evan, still a beginner at the time, who helped her adjust to her new home. Every day, he would come to the enclosure, sit on a folding chair, and read books out loud. At first, Lyra would hide in the farthest corner, but gradually, curiosity got the better of her. She started listening, and eventually she would sit near the glass. Then one morning, something remarkable happened. Lyra brought a lettuce leaf and placed it where Evan usually sat. That simple gesture marked the beginning of an extraordinary friendship. Over the years, Lyra became the true star of the zoo. She amazed everyone not just with her intelligence, but also with her care for other gorillas. She had successfully raised 4 babies of her own, and whenever newcomers arrived, she would help them settle in. She even showed young mothers how to properly hold their babies. She developed her own way of communicating with the staff. Simple gestures to express her needs or point out problems with other gorillas. But 3 days ago, something changed. Jaden Forrest, the assistant director, was the first to notice something was wrong. The observation records showed worrying signs. Lyra refused to eat, wasn't sleeping at night, and made strange sounds that no one had ever heard before. Dr. Iris Blackwood, the head veterinarian with 20 years of experience, examined Lyra and baby Zara several times. Outwardly, everything seemed fine. No obvious signs of illness. But something was clearly wrong, and this something worried all the staff members. That morning, Helga Winter came to the enclosure, an elderly retired nurse whom everyone called Grandma of the Gorillas. She visited the zoo every day, and the animals had grown used to her presence. Helga stood by the glass with her usual thermos of coffee, leaning on her cane, when she noticed something unusual in Lyra's behavior. "Evan!" Her voice, usually so calm, trembled with concern. "Look at her eyes. I've seen that look before, in mothers at the intensive care unit. Something very serious is happening." Lyra slowly approached the glass. She was holding Zara unusually, not pressed against her chest as gorilla mothers normally do, but with her arms extended forward. Her movements were careful, almost ritual-like, as if she were preparing for something important. The look in her eyes showed such human-like desperation that it took Evan's breath away. Time seemed to stop. Lyra came right up to the glass and pressed her massive hand against the transparent barrier, directly opposite Helga's hand. Then something unbelievable happened. The gorilla tried to push her baby through the glass, as if begging the humans to take her. "Nobody move," Evan commanded. His voice shook, but years of training had taught him how to act in critical situations. The few visitors present stood frozen, their phones recording a moment that would soon shock the world. An emergency medical examination revealed the terrible truth. Lyra had an aggressive form of cancer. The tumor had gone unnoticed for a long time, hidden by her thick fur and muscular build. But this was only the beginning of an even darker story. That evening, Evan and Jaden were reviewing medical records in the director's office. In the dim light of the desk lamp, they studied the medication supply logs when Jaden noticed something strange. Over the past few months, the amount of sedatives had mysteriously doubled, while painkillers had sharply decreased. Soon, Dr. Blackwood brought even more disturbing news. Lyra's blood tests showed traces of experimental drugs, substances that shouldn't have been in the zoo at all. Someone had been secretly experimenting on her. Suspicion fell on Dr. Declan Thorne. This man had arrived at the zoo 6 months ago, tall, fit, with an impeccable reputation and an impressive list of scientific papers. He had proposed a program to study primate intelligence, and at the time it had seemed like a breakthrough for their small zoo. No one had asked the simple question, why would a successful scientist from a prestigious laboratory suddenly take interest in their modest facility? Late that night at 11:47 p.m., an email appeared on Evan's computer from Thorne. Urgent meeting, guerrilla research program. A chill ran down his spine. After turning on his phone's voice recorder and saving the recording to cloud storage, he headed to the research building. Thorne was waiting in his office. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, his smile looked unnatural, almost predatory. On his desk lay a folder labeled Project Evolution. "Thank you for coming so late," Thorne began. "We have a problem with Lyra. The board of directors has already approved her transfer to a specialized facility." "Transfer?" Evan exclaimed angrily. "She needs urgent medical care. She has a tumor." "Yes, a tumor," Thorne replied softly. "Unfortunate, of course. But that makes her the perfect candidate for our research program." At that moment, all the pieces fell into place. Evan remembered the grant documents he had seen a few months ago. They mentioned something about accelerated primate evolution. Back then, it had sounded like ordinary scientific jargon. "You've been experimenting on her," Evan said, barely controlling his rage. "You deliberately used those drugs to—" Thorne's smile vanished. "You don't understand the bigger picture. Think about the possibilities. If we could accelerate primate evolution, increase their intelligence." During their argument, the folder fell from the desk. Photographs scattered across the floor, dozens of pictures of gorillas from different zoos, all with similar tumors. Evan's breath caught. "How many animals have you already killed?" They were interrupted by a blaring siren. Through the window, they could see emergency lights flashing around the gorilla enclosure. "Insurance?" Thorne explained calmly. "We can't let evidence walk around, can we? By morning, it will all be over. A tragic accident, aggressive gorilla, forced euthanasia." Evan acted quickly. First, he sent the audio recording to 2 trusted people, Helga Winter and her brother Leonard, a well-known investigative journalist. Only then did he rush to the exit. The events of the next few hours unfolded like scenes from a thriller. The police and FBI arrived at the same time as Thorne's team of fake veterinarians. In the enclosure, lit only by emergency lights, a real drama was unfolding. Lyra, sensing danger, had retreated to the farthest corner, holding Zara close. Her eyes in the darkness showed an almost human understanding of what was happening. Thorne was arrested right at the entrance to the enclosure as he tried to oversee the emergency euthanasia. Behind him, a major evidence-gathering operation was already underway. In his office safe, they found documents revealing the true scale of the conspiracy. It turned out that Evolution Biopharmaceutical Company had been using zoos worldwide as cover for testing experimental drugs. Under the guise of studying intelligence, they had been conducting dangerous experiments on endangered species. The company had spent millions bribing officials and falsifying documents. Lyra's story, the gorilla who tried to hand her baby to humans to save her from terrible experiments, spread across the globe. Leonard Winter's report, backed by video evidence and documents, caused an international scandal. Thorne and Evolution Bio's leadership received long prison sentences. The company was forced to pay massive fines, money that went toward protecting endangered species. But most importantly, people's attitudes toward animals they had once considered just beasts changed forever. 5 years have passed since those dramatic events. Woodland Park has changed significantly. Now it houses a modern research center named after Lyra. In its bright, spacious facilities, scientists study primate abilities. But now everything is done ethically and with respect for the animals. Each day brings new discoveries about the rich emotional lives of these remarkable creatures. Lyra, fully recovered after proper treatment, has become a living legend. She still comes to the viewing glass, but now not out of desperation, but to greet her friends. Zara has grown into a strong young gorilla. Together, they help rehabilitate other primates rescued from underground laboratories. In Evan's office hangs a large photograph of that historic moment. Lyra pressing her hand against the glass, trying to pass Zara to the humans. This image has become a symbol of the new relationship between humans and animals. It reminds all visitors to the center that a mother's love knows no species boundaries. Sometimes the most important lessons about humanity come from those we once considered just animals. Every morning when the first rays of sunlight illuminate the enclosure, Lyra comes out to greet her human friends. She places her huge hand against the glass, and visitors respond in kind. This simple gesture reminds us that the connection between species can be built not on dominance, but on understanding and compassion. Evan often remembers Helga's words from that fateful morning. She knew. She trusted us enough to give up the most precious thing she had, her child. Now it's our turn to prove worthy of that trust. And they prove it every day with every decision, with every new step toward better understanding our fellow creatures on this planet.